My name is Commissioner Frank Avila, and this is Avila Making a Difference. And the name of our show is Clean Water America Alliance. And today I have as my guest the president of the Clean Water America Alliance, Ken Kirk. And Ken is also the executive director of the National Association of Clean Water Agency. And Ken is here in Chicago. We're having a conference. It's called the Water Environment Federation Conference. And it's the largest in the world dealing with the water environment. And Ken is here to represent NACWA, which is the National Association of Clean Water Agency, and also the Clean Water America Alliance, and among other things. And glad that you're on my show.
Oh, thank you, Frank. It's good to be back. I love the opportunity to talk about clean water, anytime, any place.
Yes, you know, what is the Clean Water America Alliance, and when was it formed?
The Clean Water America Alliance is a relatively new organization. It has its roots in the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, NACWA. That organization is an organization that represents the interests of wastewater utilities throughout the country, including the Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. As other organizations do as well, we focus on very specific issues related to clean water that come to the fore under the Clean Water Act. There are other organizations that focus on drinking water issues,
yes.
Others that focus on stormwater issues, some that focus on water reuse issues. But it's becoming more and more clear as we move down the road that it's absolutely important to start looking at water as water.
As well, because as you mentioned, there's different types of wastewater.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, our agency is wastewater. We deal with human waste, poop and urine. That's what we treat. And we treat stormwater also if we have combined sewers. We protect our water supply, Lake Michigan. We need water to drink. And you talk about recycled water.
Absolutely.
And that's why you mentioned you have to think of water, clean water.
And the issue was, well, how do we get to the next level of clean water, if you will? If you continue to talk about these issues in their individual silos, we're not going to make the kinds of progress that we need to deal with water as a single entity. So our board said, we need to put a group of folks together under a new roof, a new house, people who represented wastewater and drinking water and water reuse, who came from different walks of life, to have a conversation about how we break down the existing silos in the water arena and start looking at things more holistically on a watershed basis, because that's where we need to go. And we didn't feel that our organization or any other organization would be able to do that on their own. So we formed this new organization.
And I was reading, you had a press release
Mm-hmm.
in the Daily Environment Report, and it was on September 25th, 2008. And it says here that a newly formed Clean Water Alliance plan, a holistic approach to problems. It states in there, a diverse group of government, environmental, industry, and academic officials joined September 24th in announcing the launching of the Clean Water American Alliance, a broad-based nonprofit organization aimed at promoting a watershed approach to improving the national water resource. This is, and this is what you just said, except what I think we have to add, a diverse group, I think we have to bring in the religious groups.
I think you're probably right, and it's certainly within our scope to bring in to this alliance all of the groups and organizations that care about clean water, not only today but for future generations, and whatever it takes this organization is going to ensure that that happens.
Yes, and I know that your group, you're a nonprofit organization, so you're going to work at a grassroots level to try and make changes.
We're going to try to work at the grassroots level, but we're also going to try to influence policy, in Washington. One of the things that's sorely needed is a national, consistent, comprehensive, integrated water policy. We don't have that now.
You mean the Clean Water Act doesn't address that?
The Clean Water Act addresses part of it. It addresses the wastewater part of it. The Safe Drinking Water Act addresses the drinking water part of it. There are elements of the Clean Water Act that address the stormwater part of it. But nobody's looking at all of these things together, and they are related. Drinking water is derived from sources that at one point are wastewater. And stormwater flows into rivers and also becomes a source of drinking water.
Yes, yes.
The reality is it's all tied together within the water cycle.
Yes.
And it's important to understand that and start addressing the problems that we're seeing on a watershed basis.
Yeah, because, the thought under the Clean Water Act is that we have to treat wastewater. And when it comes to stormwater, since stormwater is only when it rains, the water comes into the system and goes into a storm sewer, and so that is not polluted. That was a thinking a while back, and that stormwater, when it's discharged into a stream, lake, or river, or wherever it's discharged, is not polluted. But now we know that it is polluted, because when that rain comes down, it hits the pavement, and what's on the pavement?
It sure does. Interestingly, the National Research Council recently came out with a report on stormwater. I haven't had the opportunity to read this 522-page document, but I've read some accounts of it.
Yes.
And what they conclude is that the stormwater program at the Environmental Protection Agency isn't doing anything to help solve the problem related to stormwater. And they call for looking at stormwater in the context of a broader water picture, and dealing with it from a watershed approach.
Now, you must have board of directors on the Clean Water America Alliance, and you must have a committee structure.
Yes, we do.
Okay, and so and you have various groups, as you mentioned, on the board of directors. How many board of directors do you have?
We have 31 members of the board of directors, and there's an interesting story that goes along with that. When we were, forming, the organization, we identified, I would say 40 to 50 individuals who we thought, might be interested in tackling a new assignment, who might be passionate about the issues. And I was working under the assumption that at least 50 or 60% of them either wouldn't have the time or wouldn't have the interest.
Yes.
It turned out most of them did.
Oh. Well, because they're concerned.
Exactly.
And they're probably, they're concerned maybe about themselves. They want to live. They're concerned about their wives, their family, their kids, their grandkids, their great-great-grandkids. They want to make sure that we have a better planet.
So we ended up with a board, a fairly big board of 31 individuals, and some people in the industry argue, well, big boards are not good. They're not conducive to getting things done. But I can assure you, this board is absolutely incredible. They are the best in the field. They represent utilities, including Dick Lanyon with the Reclamation District, and others from Philadelphia and Portland and Cleveland. They represent the states and regional organizations. They come from academia. They come from industry. They represent consulting firms and manufacturers. And we have 3 former assistant administrators of the Office of Water at EPA also on the board. And I could tell you, they are an incredible group of people. They're all smart. They're all passionate about the issues, and they're very bright and very committed to making this organization work and moving in this new direction.
Now, your committees, how many committees do you have now?
We have 5 committees.
5? And what are the names of them?
Well, we have a development committee, which is the purpose of which is to raise money.
Okay.
We have a strategic planning committee, which is going to establish a strategy and vision for the organization. We have an exploration and analysis committee, which is going to identify and consider issues related to the overall mission of the organization. We have an education committee, which will issue reports not only to the general public, but also for policymakers. And we have a recognition committee, which is designed to create a U.S. Water Prize, a prize that is so important,
like a Nobel
Prize.
Yes.
And there is an example of that. There's a Stockholm Water Prize.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a Singapore Water Prize. Yes. This organization wants to establish a U.S. Water Prize and identify individuals and organizations who are doing things in a proactive way to move in the direction of a watershed approach.
Now, you mentioned the idea came out of your other organization that you're the executive director of, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. It came out of that group.
Correct.
And is the Water Environment Federation group involved, or are they giving an advisory? Do you have any advisory people on staff? Or,
I think it's at some point other organizations will be invited to participate on one level or another. At this point, the organization is not, but we do have one individual, Dr. Mohammed Dahab, who was formerly the president of the Water Environment Federation. We have another fellow, Andy Richardson, currently with Greeley and Hansen, who was formerly the president of the American Waterworks Association. So while the other organizations are not members per se, they are well represented within the context of the board of directors.
Now, do you have a mission statement of the Alliance?
We have a mission statement. Basically, the mission of the Alliance is to change the existing water paradigm.
And that's the mission.
That is the mission.
And you mentioned the silo also.
And break down the silos that exist between the different types of water that we're talking about.
And so basically this is only in America first. You're going to concentrate on first.
Typically, yes, because in other parts of the world, they've figured this out already.
They have?
Yes, they have. They don't look at water from the perspective of wastewater or drinking water or stormwater. They look at it as water, which is exactly what it is.
That when you say changing the water paradigm, how are you gonna what do you mean by that? How are you gonna accomplish this?
Well, it's not going to be easy, but it is doable. What we're trying to do is establish a vision of an urban community, and there are going to be more and more urban communities. And
you mean a newer urban community or the existing?
Well, existing urban communities like Chicago.
Yes.
And Chicago is doing some really important things that other parts of the country are not doing. Philadelphia is the same way. They're going into green infrastructure. They're taking a look at climate change. They're starting to look at things holistically. I think the overall vision of the Alliance is to establish a framework so that all urban areas can move forward and achieve the same types of objectives that we're talking about here in Chicago and Philadelphia and elsewhere. And once they've established that vision,
yes,
we want this organization to sit down and figure out what has to change in Washington, what has to change at the state level, what has to change at the local level, what has to change in terms of our energy policy and climate change. What are all those things that need to be done to achieve that vision?
To achieve that vision. And right now here in America we have democracy, so we have free choice, free speech. And so we have the engineers, as you mentioned, we got the scientists, we got the environmental groups, we have business, and they all have to get together to solve this problem.
Yes, they do. And the sooner we're all singing from the same page, the
yes.
better off we're going to be.
Yeah, because if one group has an idea, let's say you only have $1 billion to solve the problem, and one group has their way of spending that $1 billion, and maybe it's not going to work, or maybe it might work for what they want to do, but it might have an effect on something else that's going to hurt the water, the clean water. So that's why we have to all get together, sit down, and see what's the best way to solve it and spend the money on a cost-benefit wise to help our society there.
Absolutely, and the problems are getting more complicated and tougher. Population is rising, the cost of materials is going up, the regulatory initiatives are getting tougher.
Yes.
People are getting more frustrated, and the amount of money that's available to deal with these issues is going down.
Well, it's our economy. Right now, as we're sitting here right now, we have a financial crisis going on. The market went kaput. The banks are, we only have a certain number of banks now where the United States have to come in and be part owner of the bank there. And so, and now we need money for infrastructure.
We absolutely do, although some people would disagree with that statement, but I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
We do need money for infrastructure, but you're correct to point out that the current fiscal situation is dire. It's certainly limiting the amount of money that people are willing to invest in infrastructure at the local level. But if I, look at it a different way and say, well, maybe the glass is half full, maybe this is a reason to start and an opportunity to look at the clean water landscape differently and to do things, differently. They say the first rule of holes is that when you find yourself in one, you stop digging. And we have to stop digging and start looking at things differently to do things more cost effectively and more efficiently and in ways that reflect the need to move in the direction of green infrastructure, which is very, very apparent here in Chicago.
Yes.
And climate change.
Yes.
And many other initiatives. It's absolutely critical.
Sure, and water. We all have cars. We go fill up gas in our car, and we need other things in our life. But the most important thing that we need in our life to live is water. Now, if we don't have water, we won't last for about 3 days. So if we want to continue our recreational, go to work, have a family, go to church, go to school, we have to have water. If we don't have water, we won't be able to do everything what we want to do on this planet.
Well, you're absolutely right. A few weeks ago, no one ever would have thought that the federal government would have bailed out certain entities on Wall Street and the banking industry. But the phrase they used was, these things are too big to fail.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at clean water,
yes,
I would make the same statement.
And that's the top. I think that's the top.
This is too big to fail.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we need water for us to continue banking, for us to continue buying stock, for us to buy a house. If we don't have water, we won't be alive to do all the things that what we want to do. So are we saying, or are you saying, Kirk, that the Clean Water Act is broken, that we have to amend the Clean Water Act, and for the last 10, 20 years it's been static, it hasn't worked? What do we have to do with this Clean Water Act?
I think the Clean Water Act was an incredible statute when it was adopted by Congress over a presidential veto back in 1972. And because of the Act's requirements and the amount of money that was made available to local communities, we made incredible progress in terms of cleaning up water in the United States.
And the Clean Water Act, what was the main mission in the Clean Water Act?
It was to bring all utilities and cities up to secondary treatment.
And they were giving grants, right?
And they were giving grants. And it was the purpose was to eliminate water pollution in the United States and ensure that every river, lake, stream, other body of water, met the requirements of the Act. And we did a great job. And people all over the country invested a lot of funds and worked real hard and to a large extent achieved the objectives of the Act.
At that time.
At that time. But now, 36 years later, if you're driving a car that was 36 years old, you might have to put new windows in or a new motor or something.
Sure, repair a little bit.
Something has to happen here because the Clean Water Act, as good as it is a command and control statute that limits your ability to look at things on a watershed basis. And the problems are much more complicated now. The costs are much higher now. And it's very, very hard to tell communities to invest billions and billions of dollars into programs to clean up water when they know at the end of the day that they're not going to have any cleaner water. They're just going to have to spend $2-3 billion, and they're not going to get the results from that expenditure.
And that's where the cost benefit comes into being. And the problem is that we have groups that are going to this Clean Water Act and saying this is what you have to do now because this is what the criteria in the Clean Water Act states. Mm-hmm. And maybe that criteria, as you mentioned, is not going to work in 2008. And why should we spend that money following that criteria in 2008?
We need a new approach.
Yes. Now,
absolutely.
Is that the what are the top 21st century water-related challenges that you see the Alliance focusing on? Would that be one of the things that you'll be focusing on?
I think one of them, as I said before, is to have a conversation about how we achieve the vision. And what we are proposing is to have a summit in 2009 that would bring together individuals from not only the water community
and the religious groups. I'm pushing the religious group. Big group out there.
I assure you we will include them.
Yes, I have some names for you already.
And many others.
Yes.
And we want these folks to sit around a table and look at the vision of the Alliance,
okay,
and tell us what we need to do to achieve that vision. We don't want them sitting around the table defining what the vision is, because we think we've done a pretty good job of that. But if they want to fine-tune it, that's fine. They want to change it a little bit, fine. But we want to know what we need to do at the grassroots level, at the federal level, at the state level, to make those changes that we need to make that vision a reality.
Now, to make that a reality, how do you expect the current financial crisis we're having now will affect this reality? I mean, to try and accomplish that. I mean, we just gave $700 billion to the stock market. We're giving money to the banks, and they say we have to give a little bit more. So how do you find, because of the financial crisis we're having, how do you expect to do this now?
Well, it's not going to make it any easier for the Alliance to raise money. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, churches are even having a hard time raising money.
So it's tough, and it may take us a little longer to move forward. We are a startup organization, and The economic slump is going to affect startup organizations probably more so than others.
But it's so important because, as I mentioned, if we don't have water, if we don't drink water for 3 days, we won't be alive. So water is more precious than solving the financial market.
Right, and we're not going to go away. We're going to move forward as best we can under the circumstances, and at some point, times will change and things will get better, and we will be in a position to continue our work. We're not stopping our work.
Sure.
We're going to move out. But as I said before, the other part of it, the other part of the financial crisis is that it does present an opportunity for everybody to look at things a little differently. If we don't have the money to do it the old way, maybe there's a new way to do it that will cost less.
And provide more cost benefit to us.
And more cost benefit, and greener cities that are more attuned to the impacts of climate change and many other issues that we've been talking about.
That's true. And when in 1972, when the Clean Water Act came into being, they provided grants. This grant provided agencies to design projects, be under construction, provided jobs. So the money wasn't wasted. The money was put to good use to help the economy, to help the environment, all around. So now, if whoever is going to be elected as our president, if they could just look at the future, because everyone is talking about the economy, about jobs, this is an excellent plan that the Clean Water American Alliance could propose, saying that, look, let's change the way we and amend this Clean Water Act. We'll provide grants which will design very efficient, not look at a silo effect, and it's going to protect the environment, provide jobs, and create the economy here in America. More so than what they're doing and giving money to the financial institutions.
Well, you're probably right about that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I see it. I could see it.
Whoever the new president is going to have his hands full.
Yes.
And we are going to be there to make the case. As you know, the whole election has been about change.
Yes.
And there's going to be change. There's going to be a new Congress. There's going to be new people at EPA. There's going to be a new person in the White House. So there is going to be change, and we're going to make sure that they hear what we have to say about water policy for the 21st century. That is absolutely certainty.
Yes.
That we are going to go in there and tell them what we think.
Well, we're here in Chicago, in Cook County. We're here in the Midwest. We're living in God's country. In God's country, we have the Great Lakes. Of all the surface water in the world, 1% is for surface water, for drinking purposes. 18% of that 1% is right here in the Great Lakes. Compared to the rest of the United States, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, and one of the candidates suggested running a pipeline from our Great Lakes down to give water down to the southern states there. And so I don't think the idea is going to fly, or they want to have tankers taking water from the Great Lakes and bring it over to the desert across the ocean. And so I foresee that if we don't solve this problem, people in the next 5-10 years are going to be migrating up here to the Great Lakes because we have water.
Well, you may very well be right about that.
Oh, yes.
All the folks who went to Florida and California and Arizona and New Mexico are going to come back
here. Come back. And so if we don't solve this problem, you're going to see a migration. History shows that a whole population of people migrated away from one area to another area because they there wasn't any water to grow their crops. And maybe this is what we're facing now. And this is why we have to consider, and that's why your group is such an important group in our society, to try and bring everyone together.
Well, we think it is, and we think we're going to do our part to make that a reality.
Now, in this 2009, have you picked a town or a location where you're going to have this summit?
No, we have not. It could be in Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
and it could be in Chicago. In fact, people are talking very actively about having it in Chicago.
Now, if anyone that's watching this show that wants to have their group participate with you in this 2009, if Sherry could bring up your website.
Sure.
And Sherry could show, and people could look at your website, and they could contact you, saying that they want to be interested in joining your group, or at least knowing more about what you're planning to do.
Absolutely.
In 2009.
Absolutely. It's www.
It's right on the screen.
Oh, okay.
It's
there
right
we go.
there. And so these groups, and as you mentioned, you're happy to have other groups come in and help you improve your vision.
I think it's critical to be inclusive.
Yes.
This issue is so important to so many people.
Well, everyone.
And to their children, and to their grandchildren.
Yes.
Everyone has a stake in this issue. Everyone, as far as I know, understands how important it is. They may not understand how the Clean Water Act works, or the Safe Drinking Water Act works, but when they wake up in the morning and they turn on the tap, they expect clean water.
Right. And then
when they flush the toilet, they expect it to go away.
Yeah, and Sherry just had on the screen, Sherry, if you could bring it on again, the reason why your group has organized the Clean Water American Alliance is for our kids. Mm-hmm. Because who's going to save our planet? Our kids need a good education on the water environment for them to live long enough, 80 years old, 90 years old, so they could get a good education to solve this problem. And that's what it's all about.
And I'm sure if the Alliance is going to focus a lot of its educational activities on children. At the same time, we don't want to duplicate what other organizations are doing. So I know, for example, that our education, initiative or committee is looking at what's out there already. We don't want to
invent the wheel.
Right. We don't want to duplicate what other organizations are doing. But one of the interesting things that we're looking at is that we've entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Conservation Fund, which is a huge conservation organization. And the purpose of that memorandum is to work with them to establish a kind of a clean water academy where people from cities could go to learn about doing things differently, to learn more about green infrastructure, to learn more about climate change, to learn more about watershed approaches and what you need to do at the local level to make that a reality. We're very excited about the prospect of working with the Conservation Fund to achieve that objective.
Well, I think that's important because you could set policies, but we also have to implement on how people could put in green infrastructure, how they could improve to have clean water throughout the United States in small towns, large towns, rural areas, urban areas. And so this is why it's so important. What your group is doing now. Now, your organization will not be promoting specific legislations, right?
No.
Or regulatory conditions, right?
No, there are plenty of organizations out there who who do that.
Yeah.
Our organization is going to be there to inform the debate, to provide information to policymakers, so that they could make more reasoned decisions. The Clean Water Act has not been reauthorized for, I think, over 20 years. And the reason is that every time somebody talks about reauthorizing the Clean Water Act, people get nervous. And they think there's going to be a rollback of clean water.
Now, what type of people are they? Is that government agencies or
the Congress.
Congress?
Congress.
Congress is mainly the members there?
Well, they would be responsible for taking another look at the Clean Water Act, and they have been very reluctant to do that for fear that there would be a lot of pressure on them to roll back the environmental initiatives and regulations that have worked so well. Let's be honest, they have worked well. But whether they're going to continue to work in the future is problematical. We don't think they are going to work in the future. We need a different approach. And hopefully we're going to have an opportunity, with the new administration and with the new Congress and with everybody focused on change,
Sure.
To make some changes in this area as well.
Well, every day you read the paper, you're reading something about climate change, global warming, every day, and no one has ever come up with how to solve the problem. But they're reporting every day about it. But I don't see any solution, and this is where your group comes in.
Well, I think we're going to be focusing a lot of time on that issue as well. There will be a lot of consideration given to global warming in the next Congress. There were several pieces of legislation that were introduced last year, and I'm sure there'll be many more that are going to be introduced during the next Congress. Wet areas of the country are likely to get even wetter. Drier areas of the country are likely to become, drier.
Yeah, you have this in your. I downloaded some information from you, and what it just says climate change. The topic is climate change here, and it says that wet areas become wetter, like we saw here in Chicago. We had 6-7 inches of rain. We have over 105 billion gallons of water just came down here in the Chicagoland area, flooded out everything. As wet areas become wetter and dry areas become even drier, water supply and wastewater treatment management grow increasingly complex and intertwined. This is a big problem we're having.
It is a big problem, and one of the things we have to do is convince Congress that climate change is all about water.
Right.
They don't quite understand that.
Right.
Yet.
The next says the fact that climate change is about water quality and quantity as much as it is about air quality. Because, under the Clean Water Act, if we were to do something under this act now, it may affect the air quality. And it doesn't say, okay, but it says that you got to do it even though it's going to affect other things. You still have to do it under that act. See? And there's a problem there.
Right. And then there's also, the energy connection.
Yes.
The more regulatory requirements you have, the more you have to build bigger and better treatment plants to treat wastewater, for example, the more energy you're going to use. So at a time when we're supposed to be focusing on reducing our carbon footprint, the Clean Water Act, in some ways, is providing an incentive to enhance it.
Yeah, because of the criteria that what we have to do under that Clean Water Act, we're going to create more energy, create more CO2 in the atmosphere, and so we're affecting the air quality.
Right. So
the air quality will affect people with asthma or respiratory problems.
We need to do things smarter, better, more cost-effectively, more efficiently, and I think we have a shot at doing that.
And as you mentioned, no amendment was made on the Clean Water Act, but the Air Quality Act was probably amended.
Yes.
But they haven't even touched that Clean Water Act, and then also they have talked about point source in that Clean Water Act, but no one talks about non-point source. And in there, do you see that there has to be changed too on the non-point source, or not? Do we just leave?
No.
Explain to the audience what non-point source is.
Well, you just put your finger on the $64,000 question. The Clean Water Act requires very stringent regulations of point sources. And point sources are they're pipes, they're discrete conveyances, they're where water is discharged from a facility into a stream.
And they could point to that pipe
and they
there,
can point to that.
right there. That is that point source.
And it's very easy to know what it is and where it is, and to give that entity a permit.
Yes.
And to put requirements in the permit that you have to meet.
Yeah, criteria to treat that.
Now, what happened when Congress debated, the Clean Water Act, is they never got around to talking realistically about the other contaminants, the non-point source related. We're talking about runoff from streets, but more importantly, runoff from farms. All the fertilizers and pollutants that get put on farmland, and it rains, and they run off into the streams. 36 years after the adoption of the Clean Water Act, more than a third of the nation's waters are still polluted, still do not meet the standards of the Clean Water Act.
And that stays static right over the last 10 years, so it hasn't improved.
So while communities are investing billions and billions of dollars every single year to keep pace and make sure they don't fall behind, the agricultural community, the non-point source contributors to pollution have gotten a free ride. That has to stop. And that has to be part of the overall solution of a watershed basis. You have to look at a water basin and figure out where the pollution is coming from.
And that's a large area.
It's a large area.
Large area, yes.
But if there's a significant proportion of that coming from agricultural land, well, then we need to address that problem, because it may be less expensive to deal with that and get more bang for your buck than to continue to ratchet down on point sources, like the reclamation district.
Yeah, like we're up here in Cook County. In our agency, we have 7 wastewater plants that we treat wastewater, what you flush down your toilet, the stormwater comes into our system. And when we treat it, we're a point source. We discharge that into our channel. From our channel, we discharge that into the Des Plaines River. Now, we meet the criteria of what they said on how we should treat wastewater. And so it's discharged into our channel. It goes into this, we discharge that into the Des Plaines River. From the Des Plaines River, it goes into the Illinois River. From the Illinois River, it goes into Mississippi. And from Mississippi, it goes into the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
At the end of the Gulf of Mexico, we have a dead zone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the dead zone is not because of the way our point source, of how we're treating our wastewater. The dead zone is what you just said, is that non-point source. And so a lot of people doesn't realize that we do have a dead zone at the end of the Gulf of Mexico because of all that runoff, which is our non-point source, is coming into our rivers and streams. And that's why your group, are they going to try and amend this Clean Water Act to see how they could address this non-point source? It's a big problem.
We are going to establish a dialogue.
A dialogue? Okay.
About what needs to be done. Okay. And obviously this will be a big part
it's a big problem.
Of it. When you take into account the fact that over the next 30, 35 years, we're going to have another 100 million people in the United States. If you just look at that in and of itself, and add up how much more pollution those individuals will create, if you don't do anything, we're going to be at the same level of pollution that we were in 1970.
Yes, under the Clean Water Act.
Before the Clean Water Act was passed.
Right.
And that would be a significant waste of resources, because communities have spent billions and billions of dollars over the years making so much progress. To lose that would be a horrible situation and would not be guaranteeing any clean water for any future generation.
And the problem that I see to resolve all this problem, and as you mentioned, it's not going to only involve how we could take care of our water. You mentioned we're going to have to bring in an energy committee. Mm-hmm. We may have to bring in the farm bill.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about it has an effect on everything we do in Washington, D.C., on the various bills that they pass as relate to how we run our life. I mean, this is a big undertaking, because just look, we need to live. What do we need? We need water, and we need food. Now, we get water, we don't grow water. Water is the water cycle. It rains, evaporates. So we've been using this water over 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, water. But food, we grow food. Does that mean that we have to talk with the Farm Bureau or the lobbyists or to see how we could change how we farm? I mean, we're talking about a big organization there, and so that's a big undertaking, Ken.
It's a big undertaking, and they're a very powerful organization. Yes. But you know, the reality is that times have changed, and I believe that they may be more receptive to doing things, you know, differently. I'm not sure about that, but certainly they will be on our list of organizations to
bring in and talk to. Yeah, and not only the Farm Bureau, because we have the companies that provide the seed, that provide the fertilizer, that provide the pesticides and herbicides. We have to bring them in, showing that the product that we're getting, that we're applying on our land, may not be the best type of product to use. Mm-hmm. And so we have to, because, you know, their business, and their business is their bottom line, they have to make a profit, which we all understand that. So how, you know, to change that idea or that attitude is a big problem.
It's going to be hard.
But it has to be solved. It has to be solved there.
And just going back to what we were talking about before, money is going to be a big challenge.
Yes.
I mean, we've had a debate over the extent to which the federal government should contribute to help communities meet requirements under the Clean Water Act for years. And there's a group that says, well, this is a local problem. They should handle it, you know, at the local level. And there's a group that says, no, you know, the federal government has a stake in clean water, and this is a national priority, or it should be, just as big as Wall Street,
yes.
If not, and I think even more important.
I think it's more important. I think, and that's why your religious groups mm-hmm. are starting to get involved in the environment, because they realize that they may not have any members coming to their church if no one is alive. And that's why they say we have to start playing a role. Now, their role is not how to plan and solve, you know, design and everything. That's not their role. But their role is to bring in policies. Mm-hmm. And your role is you have scientists, engineers, so you're going to bring the vision, the policy, and you're going to work with these various groups.
Well, and they would be very helpful to us in getting our message out and supporting us, because, you know, we do need to start talking to people outside our own small water community.
Yeah, to the choir, you're talking
right.
to the choir. Yeah.
We do real well when we talk to ourselves. We need to start reaching out and talking to a lot of other people.
Now this summit, I'm very interested in this summit. There, do you have a committee now that's planning this summit, or just is this just in the thinking stage right now?
Well, we know we're going to have it.
Okay, you know you're going to have it. Okay.
And the Strategic Planning Committee of the Alliance is going to be meeting in Kansas City in early December.
Okay. Is that all the committee, or just a certain group?
That'll be the board.
The board?
The 31-member board.
Okay.
Will
They'll be meeting in Kansas?
They'll be meeting in Kansas, and what we're going to ask them to do is to, you know, define more clearly, you know, what the vision of the Alliance is. I mean, we have a broad idea, and I've talked about that broad idea today, but what we would like them to do is put a little more meat on the bones, so that we have a much clearer picture as to what that vision is.
Okay.
We want to take that vision into the summit.
Now, explain the vision again to our audience.
The vision, you know, relates to how an urban area, you know, relates to the water environment. And as we've been talking about, you know, this issue, we've talking about silos where communities are required to deal with wastewater issues and drinking water issues and stormwater issues all separately.
Silo, yes.
And what we're saying is that it's much better, less expensive, more environmentally protective to look at these issues on an integrated, watershed, consistent basis.
But you're talking about an urban area.
Correct.
And these are point sources. What is there any plan for the non-point source in the rural area to look at also?
Obviously, yes. I mean, the non-point source,
Yes.
you know, can
The ag, you know, we're talking about we have to talk about the
Absolutely.
agriculture areas too.
But they're typically outside of urban areas, but they are contributing to the pollution problems of urban areas, so they have to be part of the solution as well. And there has to be incentives, you know, for both the agricultural community and for the people in the urban areas to work with them. And it may be a lot easier and cheaper for an urban area to give some money to a farmer upstream,
Yes.
than otherwise.
Yes.
Than to put in a new treatment plant.
Well, that's true, because you know it's always been my feeling is that everyone talks about this farm bill, the farm subsidy bill,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, why should we give a farmer a subsidy? Well, you know, the farmer needs that subsidy because he's barely making it. Because after he buys his, you know, before a farm, you used to have the whole family working, and you have to have maybe 12, 20 people working. Where on a farm, they used to grow their crops. Maybe they had 5 different crops growing, and they used to grow their own food to subside on and everything. Nowadays, because of the equipment comes in, the tractor, it eliminated all that labor. So probably on a farm, you're going to have maybe a husband and wife working a farm, and his equipment costs a lot of money, and so the government came with this farm bill a while back, and so he's getting this little subsidy. And the companies that are really making the money are the companies that are providing him the seeds, the fertilizer, they own the silo there. And that's why I liked your idea when you mentioned that the money is in the urban, and maybe we should help out that farmer.
Yeah,
to change the way he's farming.
I agree. I think it's very important to look at a lot of different ways of doing things.
Sure.
We're not going to make any progress without the farm community.
No.
And they need to feel, as a partner would feel, in this endeavor.
Yes.
And we will reach out to them. There's no question.
I'm all for it. My wife, when she was growing up, her family relatives are farmers, and they still are in Nebraska. They farm up there, and we went up there this summer, and the family is just the husband and the wife, and she drives a tractor, she drives a semi-truck, he drives. You know, I mean, they're good drivers.
Well, the last farm bill included billions of dollars for conservation measures, which we worked for. We worked really hard to get as much money as possible for programs like that. But the only problem is there's no connection between those programs and water quality. So it's not like a state can say, well, you know, this river is impacted.
Yeah.
And
by an antrazine that they're.
And if these farms over here have so much money, we can deal with this issue.
Sure.
It's willy-nilly.
Sure.
They don't connect the dots,
Sure.
if you will, between the agricultural problem and the pollution problem that we're facing in this country. And that has to change.
Right, because right now they say all of our crops, you know, we're, as I mentioned, we're living in God's country. We have the Great Lakes, we have Lake Michigan here, and we have the best soil around here, and we have corn, soybean. I mean, our guys are making, are growing corn 160 bushel, 200 bushel an acre here, but a large percentage of that is now not for food consumption, but for energy. Now they want to make this ethanol that is depleting our water supply.
That doesn't. That's an energy practice that I don't think is going to be around for much longer.
No. So as I mentioned, you have to bring everyone together, and to try and solve this problem. I think your group could solve the problem. It's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a problem where, as you mentioned, you have to get everyone involved, everyone from all walks of life, into your summit in 2009, and they could watch your website, right? Sherry, if you could bring up the website again, because I want the audience to know where to, or any groups out there, where to contact your group. Contact by email, phone number, right, Ken?
Yes.
And they could write to you explaining how they want to help you.
They sure can. They can also make contributions.
Well, that's true. You know, everyone is hurting right now. Our church is hurting for contribution, but water is the #1 product that the good Lord put on us for us to live. If we don't have water, we won't live to solve all these problems. We won't have water to get married, have kids. We won't have water to go to the show, because if we're not alive, how are we going to do all these things?
Right. Absolutely right, and we have to keep it clean.
Right, and that's where our wastewater plants. You know, here in our district, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, we have 3 of the largest wastewater plants in America, and 1 is the largest in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we are doing a very good job. And now we're upgrading 3 of our plants at a tune of about $2.3 billion. Now, if we have to provide nutrient removal, it's going to spend another $1 billion without any government funding. So the taxpayers of Cook County is going to have to pay for all of this because of the requirements that they're going to put on us. And they're not giving us any money. And so I hope you're could change or amend that Clean Water Act, and maybe they'll provide some grants for us to provide more jobs, improve the economy and our water environment.
Well, we're going to work real hard to try to try to do that. You know, what EPA has said is that if we don't significantly invest more in clean and safe water over the next 15, 20 years, we are going to see levels of water quality pollution that we haven't seen in 35 years.
I haven't read that report.
And all the gains that we have achieved over the last 35 years
will be gone. Huh?
Will be gone.
And so that's why it's so important. Hear that, folks? We have to amend, or not change, just amend, right? We're going to amend it, or
amend it.
Amend it, yes. That is a Clean Water Act, which is the most important thing I think facing our people are here in America.